Computer Training Solutions, and we do training with individuals as well as with corporate groups and all the Microsoft Office products. And many people are using Word, of course, and have been for years, and know how to do standard formatting with characters and with paragraphs. But there's a lot of more sophisticated formatting that you can do if you are interested in putting together more complex documents like newsletters and perhaps involved reports. So I have up here a document that's kind of the beginning of a newsletter. There's a masthead of sorts on top and a header that gives us a title. And then there's simply some topics with headings, subheadings for the topics, and it goes on for about 4 pages. But it doesn't look a whole lot like a newsletter. So we're going to make some changes so that it really looks like a newsletter. And one of the things that we want to do is make sure that this title does not wrap like it does now. I want news on the same line as the first line OGC properties. And I could do that by making the margins smaller, but I don't want to make the margins smaller for the rest of the document. And as you know, if you modify margins, that's what's going to happen. It's going to change the margins for the whole document. The way you can change the margins for a portion of a document is to divide up the document into sections. So sections is an important component of these various types of advanced features. So changing margins in portions of the document. Also, sections would allow you to take a lengthy document where you might have a table in one portion and want that table to be in landscape. You don't want the whole document in landscape, so you can create a separate section for that page or pages and do that portion in landscape. You can also have different headings or footers, headers or footers in your document if you put things in different sections. And also you can do page numbering separately. So you might have a 10-page document numbered 1 through 10, and then you have an appendix on it that you want numbered ABC, and you would need to create a separate section for that area of the document in order to restart the numbering and put it in a format you like. So how do we create sections? Well, the first thing I would say is if you have your show hide turned on, which I've just done here in my home tab paragraph group, that will allow you to see where all the returns are. And that's going to be very helpful to let you see where you can click to create sections. So I'm going to click just above this title area, and I'm going to go to the page layout, the layout area, and I'm going to say breaks. And first we're seeing page breaks, but now we're seeing section breaks down here. And if I clicked on this first one, I'm going to create a new page, which I don't want to do. So the second one says I'm going to put in a continuous section break remaining on the same page. And you can see that it does say section break, and that's because we have the show hide on. If we did not, you wouldn't see that. I'm also going to create a section break below that section. So now this is now section 2. Only section 1 is only this area. Everything below it is now section 2. How can we tell what section we're in at a glance? On your status bar on the bottom of the screen, where it tells you where your page numbers are and how many words, if you right-click somewhere on that status bar, you'll see a whole bunch of items that you can either turn on or turn off, like caps lock and line numbering and so forth. And section is one of them. And once I turn that on, it tells me what section I'm in whenever I click in a document. So I'll just click away from that to turn it off. And now I'm in section 1 because I'm up in the masthead. And as soon as I click somewhere else, it tells me I'm in section 2, all the way in the bottom left corner. Okay, so I'm going to click over here, and I'm going to again create a continuous section break. And again, it shows me that because I have the show hide on. And now I'm in section 3. The rest of the document below it is section 3. So since I want to change the margins of only section 2, I'm going to click somewhere in section 2, and then I'm going to go in my layout, margins, and I'm going to go to customize those margins, and I'm simply going to change the left and the right margin to 1 inch instead of 1.25, and that will be enough to have this not break the title, not have to make it smaller, and it doesn't change the margins of anything else. So that's the kind of the first thing that we want to do here. Sometimes we might also want to create a header, and I just double-clicked in the top margin area, and I'm going to just put in here OGC Properties, which is our fake company here, and I want to trademark that. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab, and all the way on the right is the symbol choice, and typically trademark will be one of your first symbols that you'll see because it's a very common one. And once I do that, if I go to the next page, you'll see that header on every page. What if I only want it to show on the first page? Sometimes we don't want the header to carry through. I'm going to click on it on the second page. And when I go into the Header and Footer Tools Design tab, you will see that Link to Previous is automatically highlighted, and that's why a header or a footer continues throughout the whole document. But if I do not want it to continue, I can uncheck it. It's not linked to the previous, and then when I delete it on page 2, what's going to happen, I'm going to close out of Header and Footer. It's going to still be on page 1. And it's not going to be on any of the subsequent pages. Okay? So that's another thing you might want to keep in mind that you can do. To make it look more like a newsletter, we might want to have multiple columns here. And so I'm going to click into what's now section 3. And again, you can see that on the status bar all the way on the left. And I'm going to say I want this to be a 2-column piece, and only from this point forward. So if I go to Layout, there is a choice for columns in the page setup. And when I click into columns, I could simply say 2, and it would give us what we want. But I'm going to go down to more columns to see all of the different choices. And so here I will say 2. And what it does by default is it makes them 2 equal columns with a 1/2 inch of spacing between. If I need, which is fine for what I want to do, but if I wanted to modify the width or the spacing, I could do that at this point. And it also would automatically put a line between, which if I don't want, I can turn off. And notice that it applies to this section. I could tell it from this point forward, which in this document would be the same thing, or I could tell it the whole document. But this section is the default, and that's what we want. So I'm going to say OK. And now I have a 2-column. I think I'm going to delete this extra return, and so make it look nice. And here's my 2-column for the rest of the document. Okay. So that's what happens. Now, if we go to the bottom of page 2, you'll see that there is a topic, a heading, and most of the topic is on the following page. So what I would like to do then is to tell it to create a column break here, because that will pop it to the next column, to the top of the next column, which is the next page. So again, I'm in Layout, and I'm going to go to Breaks, and now we have Column Break. And when I click on that, notice, again, it says Column Break because we have the Show Hide on, and here is our topic all on the next page. Likewise, below this little table, I have a topic that continues on the next column, and it's kind of uneven looking, so I might want to push that to the next column as well. So I'm going to click here in front of the rates, say, and I'm going to go again to Breaks and say it gives me a column break. And now that goes to the next column, and it makes things look a little bit nicer, a little bit more even. So again, if I go back to Home and I turn off that Show Hide, notice you don't see any notifications about column breaks, section breaks, returns, and so forth, which is fine once you finish your document, but it's very handy to have that stuff on when you're working on it. And of course, it will not print anyway, even if you were to print it with the Show Hide on. Okay. So for now, we're finished with this document, And I'm going to open up another one to show you another it looks similar, but it has something else in it that we need. So a lot of times in a newsletter or a newspaper, we start stories on page 1 and they continue somewhere else. Sometimes we start multiple stories on one page and continue them on another page. So here we have a similar document, but notice there's a text box here, and the text box underneath it, it says continued on page 3. And then on page 3, it just says continued from page 1. So I'm going to show you how you can, in Word, start some text on one page and then link it to and continue it to a box on another page. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on, I'm going to open up another piece of text, and I'm just going to select all of this text with a Control-A, and then copy it with a Control-C, and then minimize it. So this is going to be the text we're going to flow into here. And then I'm going to right-click here, and I'm going to paste it. And of course, it doesn't have room for all of it because it's much too much. So in order to continue it on another page, we're going to create a text box here to flow it into. So we're going to say Insert, and then in the text area, text box, and I want to draw one. And I'm just going to draw a text box in what I think will be the fitting area. I can always adjust it later. And then I'm going to go back to where the text started flowing in and just click anywhere in that information. And I need to, in my formatting drawing tools for the text box, I need to create a link. And when I click on Create Link, notice my cursor looks like a little picture. And when I scroll down to where I want to continue it, and I put my picture inside that box, look, it's pouring out something. When I click, there goes the text. And I'm going to see if I have enough space. Yes, it looks like I made it a little bigger than it needs to be. So I'm going to shorten that up just a little bit. And there we go. Again, I might want to turn on my show hide here so I can tell that it's the end. Yeah, so there we go. And I have continued, and if we just check that out, it says 30-year fixed mortgages are at 7%, 15-year fixed mortgages, etc. So it has flowed in. So you could do that with as many different stories as you like. And so it's relatively easy to flow text from one text box into another in Word. Another feature that we sometimes use in reports and in newsletters and so forth to draw people in. I'm going to go back to my original newsletter. And a lot of times, we might want to draw somebody into a paragraph by enlarging the first letter of a paragraph. You've seen this in magazines many, many times, and it's very easy to do here. So if you just click anywhere in the paragraph, okay, and you go to Insert, and over on the right in the text area, you go to Drop Cap. You have some choices here, but what you want to do almost always is do Dropped. And when you click on Dropped, what it does is it uses the same font that the text is in. It drops that first character 3 lines and obviously makes it much larger. Now you do have some choices. If I go to Drop Cap and I go to Options, Drop Cap Options, I can say, well, I don't want to use Times New Roman, which is the font that's in. Maybe I want to use, trying to pick something a little bit different. Maybe I want to use Comic Sans. And maybe instead of 3 lines, I want to do 4 lines or 2 lines. And I say, okay, and there we go. So you might want to use something a little bit different. Obviously, you don't want to do that on every paragraph because it's going to be rather annoying. But if you have some particular emphasis you want to put on something, it might be a nice way to do that. So Drop Cap is always available to you in any kind of document that you are using. Okay, another feature that comes in handy with these kind of documents is maybe you want to insert a picture. So in buying a home here, maybe I want to have a picture of a house. So I'm going to say Insert, I'm in the Insert tab, Online Pictures, and I'm going to say House. as to what I want it to look for, and it's going to find me lots of different house pictures. And let's say I just want to pick a normal looking house, and I say OK, insert it, and there's my house. Fine. If I make that smaller, notice the text is kind of skipping the house and going from above to below. However, I can either over here go to layout options, or up here go to wrap text and tell it I want to wrap that text around it, square or even tighter to the picture. I can put the text behind it or above it, which doesn't make much sense, so I'm going to say tight. And now, wherever I move that text, notice how the text will wrap. Even if I put it in a totally different place, it's going to follow my instructions as to how I wanted it to sit in that, how I wanted the text to wrap around it. So that's kind of neat. And you can always do that. Okay, a couple more items. I want to use another document to show you. So here's kind of a report document rather than a newsletter. And let me just make this a little larger. Okay, so here's a report that has different subtitles. It has some graphics in it. It has some charts in it, an org chart and so forth. So it's a few pages long. And if you're preparing a report like this, you might want to, first of all, put a cover sheet on it. And if you do an insert, if you go to the Insert tab and you look all the way to the left, you'll see Cover Page. And the program actually gives you 15 or so different cover pages that you can use with built-in graphics and other items, styles that you might want to use. And so if we pick something here, let's say we pick, I don't know, this one. So it picks up the first title as a name, and it has the author as student. So you can obviously change anything you want. So let's say I do this and I put in, I put in my name. And if I wanted to put in a company name here, I could, an address I could. If I don't want to do that, I can simply delete those items. If I want to modify how this looks, I can certainly do that, and so forth. You can take out anything you want. You can add in anything you want. It's just giving you something to work with, right? And then following through on that, once I go to my document, if I want to put in headers or footers, all right, and I say, I get to this, if I say insert, well, let's see, here's header. And so it gives me a whole bunch of different styles for headers. Many of those match the kind of cover page. So the graphics, the colors, and so forth are matching that, which is pretty neat, because I don't remember what name I chose for that, but let's just say it was this. Probably not, but you get the idea. So you can have matching graphics, colors, styles from your title page to the rest of your information, which is pretty neat. Okay. Another thing you might want to do, which is pretty interesting, is pull in, do what we call a pull quote, pull in something important to you, a paragraph or something that's you want to emphasize in particular. And if you say insert, I'm just going to turn this off. If you say insert, on one page, and you go to text box, before we just drew a text box for our overflow of the story from page 1, but here we have all sorts of text boxes that are pre-formatted for us, again, with different colors, schemes, and so forth, and they all have a name of what style. And if you wanted to have this banded sidebar, it's actually going to give you something like this, which you can put in a title. You can modify if you don't want it to be that large. You can modify it, and of course you can either copy and paste in the text you want, or you can type in what you want and replace that text with whatever makes sense to you. So that's kind of neat. And just to show you a couple of other choices on that, if I say insert text box and I want to do what they call a banded quote, so this is a quote that you might want to place, whoops, I don't want to move the band, I want to move the quote, that you might want to place in the middle of something to make a point, and so forth. So you have all of those choices without having to manually create that kind of a style. So those are some of the features, some of the more outstanding features that can be used to create more sophisticated documents. And if anyone has any questions, you can type them into the chat room. Okay. So otherwise, have fun playing with the word features, and we'll see you in a month or so when we do another webinar. Thanks.